I'm Lola.
And I'm Mamuna. Together, we have a combined 35 years of experience within the tech scene in North America and Europe.
We talk about the highs, the lows, the WTFs of navigating the technology industry and answer your questions about navigating tech careers.
This is Lost in Tech. Hello.
Howdy doody.
How are we doing?
Is that a whole emotion?
That alone.
I am in my grand old age of 25 plus 17. I am still not learning that hangovers are a real biatch. And I'm struggling with being hungover today. So,
What's your remedies? Hungover. What do you do?
So, greasy food when you get home because you know you're going to regret it if you don't eat something before the next day. Electrolytes and water and lots of water.
I'm not sure that's truly logical there. Greasy foods. So you're going to regret it if you don't eat something. Because something does not have to be greasy. Doesn't that add on to the regrets in the next morning?
No, because, so I think grease is the cure for like your body craving recovery salts. So like in my experience, but then your belly still feels So then if you eat some so I had a burger at 1 a.m. in the morning. And it's not the most comfortable this morning, but I feel like if I hadn't had the burger, I would feel even worse. Yeah. And then it's like now this morning I can take electrolytes and I've got my electrolytes with my water and I'm drinking that. But I want to sleep.
Yeah.
I want to cuddle myself and just like rock back and forth and not have to work. But I've actually got a really intense day. So that's how I am. How are you?
You're going to make it. I'm good. It's been busy. The childcare is like can make or break the week, the day, you know?
Yes.
So it can add or it can detract, subtract. And this week it's adding.
Yeah.
But, kind of go with the flow, just, accept things are not going to be the standard as scheduled and just roll with it. So this has been very much what's it when you are in the ocean and you have strong undercurrent and it pulls you onto the ocean. You're not supposed to fight against it. You just kind of let it take you. And then once you get out somewhere, exactly. So that's me. I'm being pulled out into the middle of the ocean right now.
Yeah. Shout out to all the hardworking parenting tech execs because that workshop does not respect your childcare needs on a given day.
They don't care. You just need to be there, smiling and ready to go.
Yes. But we handle it. We are there.
Yes,
we show up. We show up and we do the damn thing.
Yes, we do. So, what you been reading about?
Reading is a stretch. I don't have time to read, but I'm still on my podcast game. And actually, there was a really interesting topic that I heard. I was listening to the New York Times podcast last week, which I love every day, daily. And they had an episode focused on Starlink, which is this company that provides internet access through satellites in the sky. And it is owned by our one and only super famous Elon Musk. Thing is, I was listening to this episode and I was like, this is the plot of Superman. Like every Superman movie with Lex Luthor, he's like this ultra billionaire tech mogul who does some kind of infrastructure and utility play, and then he uses it to try and take over the world.
Yeah.
And but the story was basically like of all of the lower orbit satellites in space, Starlink has something like 4,500, which is nearly like 50%. And because Elon owns SpaceX, which is the company that's innovated reusable rockets, he can just keep sending them into the sky with no problems. And I'm like, wow, he's just doing it in front of us. He's becoming Lex Luthor in front of us. And one day we're going to wake up and he's going to be like, I'm holding the world hostage if you don't give me whatever.
What's interesting is that he's doing it under the guise of SpaceX, which everyone is like, it's a very innovative company. It has like the reusable rockets, and we're watching them go up and come back down and land and clap. He did during the war, he's sent he brought access to internet over Ukraine.
Yeah.
You know, how he did that.
But it's great. That's what your benevolence in a time of war, because you can offer a service and then you're now like controlling the sky above the planet.
Right. But yeah, I think that it's going to be interesting. It's almost like I think you used the term vertical integration.
Yeah.
We were chatting earlier. You know, so he's able to, he has no dependencies. It's just him. And so he's able to streamline this operations. Costs are down and he's just getting them up there.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting for competition over time.
Well, it's the ultimate anti-competitive move.
Right.
It's if you have enough money, if your money's long enough to go, because, okay, so let's reframe it as a tech story. SpaceX, Elon Musk bought it. And like, again, people see him as like this incredible founder. He's not a founder. He's never founded any of his companies, but he's obviously very good at identifying something in a company, buys it, invests, doubles down, and then goes from there. Kind of what he did with PayPal. But SpaceX spent a lot of years failing at doing what it was doing until it succeeded at sending and making and reusing rockets. So like they had this vision, but they needed infinite money to keep working at that dream. That is a separate company from Starlink.
Right.
But because he, the individual, has spread out his infrastructure, so now he's got battery manufacturing for his Teslas.
Yeah.
And he's got reusable rockets for space. And then he's got satellites for internet access. Who's going to not
be interconnected?
Yeah. And I think other companies have also demonstrated, like when you get to a certain scale, the ultimate anti-competitive move is to vertically integrate. Like Apple had to start manufacturing its own chips.
Yep.
They had to start building factories outside of China. You know, like you see hardware players realizing that there's a particular scale where you need to control more of your pipeline because it's your biggest risk. But that's okay when the companies are controlled by boards and not by Lex Luthor type.
Individually. I mean, I think it's interesting even how he's influencing the EV market, where he is now standardizing how other EV companies are building.
Charging.
They're going to charging, exactly. So they're going to be relying on Tesla charging stations because they were first to, like many geos that those EVs are not available in.
Yeah. It's probably the area where I would say he is a genius. It's like he's gone into these incredibly complex, challenging domains. And in physical hardware, which, you know, a lot of people will talk a lot about software, but I think hardware is really where the complicated end of things is ultimately.
For sure.
And he is creating a dependency on his own infrastructure in such a way that, like, I don't know, this is it. I'm both kind of like in awe of the tech story and like freaked out that one day he's going to do like a ransom of the world, and we're going to need a Superman. And where's Superman? Who is Superman? Where is Superman? Where's Clark Kent when you need him?
Go dip yourself in some radioactive something and hope to come out. You know, I think this is where you start to think about, like, is there a need for regulation to some degree? But then that would probably stifle innovation in this space.
Without question.
But I bet with a little bit of time, all of the other providers who are thinking about, like, you know, those lower orbit satellites, they're going to start to say, hey, regulation is needed. Start complaining. I'm sure of it, because you can't have that many satellites up there.
But there was no regulation. And the satellites are already up there. So how do you get them down? Like, as far as I know, and this is totally making it up, I don't think you can land a satellite. I think they just get to a point where they fall and then you send another one up. So And he's still sending them. So that number's just going up. So, hey, regulation, but like, what does it really mean? We don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. But the other thing that when you mention regulation that comes to mind, again, I do recommend the New York Times Daily Podcast because it's one of these genres of podcasts where like they do one story each day. So you can actually get lots of facets. Connected to that is the US trying to regulate the production of these nanochips that go into like everything. And, you know, this is like super technical, highly innovative space where like some of these chips are the size of a cell and they'll still have a ton of transmitters on them. And so the infrastructure to even make the chip and then the pace of production and all of that, the US is trying to regulate that to prevent China from having access.
So that makes me think of like a lot of the molecular therapy. But then isn't there something that Elon is doing where he wants to inject that chip into the brainstem?
Yes, I think so. This is why he's Lex Luthor. This is what I mean. I did hear about this. He had a whole like thing about this like helmet and then like some kind of injectable in the brain. I'm telling you guys, we're calling it here first. He is our supervillain. We thought it was going to be Jeff Bezos, but it's not. It's going to be Elon. He's actually got the brain.
He's just doing it. That's so interesting.
Yeah, it's actually, I hadn't connected that, but yeah, the size of these nanochips is so small, so almost invisible to the human eye that they can put in stuff and use it to power all sorts of tech. And when we talked about the Apple Vision Pro a few episodes ago, we talked about the resolution that was possible in this tiny, tiny space, this tiny surface area. It's all part of this tech. And so regulation is on the table in some cases, like around these chips, because access to them essentially gives you access to like supercomputing powers. And those are politically sensitive things. But I don't know why we're not also regulating US citizens who are sending satellites into space in the same mindset. It's like this individual probably shouldn't control all of those things, but
he's ahead. He's ahead of the thought there. And so at some point, folks are going to catch up. And then at that point, it's going to be, you know, oh no, what do we do?
Yeah. But then he's an infrastructure player because again, and maybe this is my last point on him, the smartest thing he did with SpaceX is he rents his reusable rockets to NASA.
Yes.
Who never invested in making reusable rockets. And so they have to pay him and they pay SpaceX to send supplies up to space stations. And he's now a key utility in the US's space operations.
Space, batteries.
And your brain.
Your brain. Oh, gosh.
Elon Musk, if you're listening to this, please don't turn into Lex Luthor, okay? We're okay with you having Twitter battles or X battles with other tech bros. Give us some memes. But please, please do not hold the earth hostage. You know, we have a letter for this week.
We do. And it's my turn.
It is your turn to read, lady.
Hey, Lola Mamuna. Big time fan of your podcast. I'm writing to get some of your thoughts and advice on a situation I'm dealing with in my career. Back in May, the company I worked for the past 5 years had laid off 20% of its workforce. I was laid off while I was in my first trimester of pregnancy. Although my husband encouraged me to take the time off and enjoy my pregnancy and maternity leave and then look for a new role, I personally felt the pressure to try to find a new job ASAP, given the economic climate and job market. I started to apply for several roles, and to my surprise, before I knew it, I had 3 solid offers in front of me, but I was really struggling to make the right choice. Struggling with what the right choice was. One offer was easier to reject, as it wasn't a company or mission I felt strongly about. It was a contract position, so it didn't meet my needs. But the two offers were for really great companies. One was a social media giant, which would require me and my family to relocate to California and adapt to their hybrid working model. The other was an offer from a fintech, which would allow me to stay in Canada and continue to working fully remote from home. How do I go about choosing the right offer for me, but also consider all the other factors in mind, like relocation, pay, upcoming baby, etc. Thank you for your advice and help. Anonymous.
I mean, first of all, this is such a great letter in a few ways because I believe in most countries there is no legal obligation to disclose a pregnancy. But I believe the writer did because she wanted to be transparent. And shout out to the 3 companies that demonstrated that an incredible candidate is an incredible candidate, even if they are at a life stage that means that they're going to need a maternity leave. It doesn't change how good they are, how strong their fit could be for your company. And so, yes, hire pregnant women, damn it.
Yes. Hire them.
Hire them all the time. But yeah, what do you think?
+1 to everything you said first. Yeah. I think this is like a very, just like first trimester, a lot of those changes. Now you're looking at new roles, these jobs come up and you're like, okay, well, what do I do? And so there's a lot to just think through. And I think the first thing you have to consider is, are these jobs really all the same? Mm-hmm. So, you know, when you're thinking about the role, the scope, the level, the responsibility, everything, are you looking at them as if they're all equal, or are there differences? Have you approached something in this way?
Yeah, I think sometimes you see, especially if you're getting a job where your title might not change, but actually you need to take a second and be like, are the jobs actually different? How big's the team? What would the role look like? What's the trajectory of growth in that environment? And it's okay to compare apples with apples. Like if the jobs are identical and everything's the same, then it's a question of like, do you want to relocate? Is there more money on the table? And does it make sense? But if actually these are 2 different career paths, then you want to make sure that you're thinking about that specifically, right? It's this job means I end up here in 2 years, and this job means I end up here in 2 years. Which one of those outcomes do I want?
I think a lot of people, when they're offered a role, get really excited about the now, and they don't push on, or they don't feel comfortable or think they should push with the hiring manager as to what that role looks like in the future. Oftentimes, I think a lot of folks think, okay, well, I don't want to scare my manager. I don't want them to think I'm too ambitious and looking past even their role. But it's important because you could get in the role six months down the line and say, okay, I finished everything I thought I was going to do. Now what?
Right.
And if you don't have a good sense of what that path could be, you're going to feel stuck. Yeah. And it would suck to be in a place where you're trying to now look for a new role because you did not, or you didn't think to, dig a bit deeper before you committed.
100%, 100%. And I think another thing is like, let's not ignore the pregnancy. You are about to have a child. So there are also questions here about bringing that, what do you feel you can take on, right? Like, is this going to be all about like high demand, super intense, or is this job going to allow you, is it going to respect your return to work? So like, what are their leave policies? Can you ask questions about what their infrastructure is for working parents, like things that they do, support groups? These are worthwhile questions to bring into the decision-making process, because it will help you find comfort knowing that when you take a leave and come back, you've at least understood what you're going to be able to expect from them. And because you don't really know exactly how your, birthing experience and like the initial period of your child's life is going to be. So you just want to factor in that you're in a company that understands that's a thing, which I hope it sounds like it could be the case here,
Yeah. And I think it also, as you're speaking to people, looking at the team and seeing, are you working with people who also have families, who've been through similar situations? And so there tends to be more empathy, and understanding, if your nanny is sick, or if you have to slip out for 30 minutes to a doctor's appointment, whatever it may be, it's not, you don't feel that it's just you going through this, but you have people around you who are like, oh yeah, don't worry, I'll help you. I've been through something similar as well.
And I think there's a positive change I have noticed in that in the last few years, in that, in a very male-centric world, those things were happening while men were working, but they weren't doing them.
Right.
But I think now I've come across more like shared parental responsibilities. And so even with male bosses, you can have a conversation that like, my child's sick today, and like,
Yes.
I therefore can't be fully on in the way you want me to,
100%.
or I actually can't work at all. And so just trying to have those conversations so you see their reactions and responses is important for sure.
Yeah. I think another item to just think through is, we are looking at this opportunity going forward, but you also want to reflect on your past and not just, your past job, but like all of the jobs. And so it's good to just take into stock what things give you energy.
Yes.
In the role, because a lot of times we do the thing because it's part of our role.
Yes.
But we may not enjoy it, or it may be the most draining activity. I can think of a few myself.
Yeah.
And so when you have a chance to look at new opportunities, you don't have to carry through the things that you were doing just because you were doing them. You can say, I'm a new person. I have new responsibilities. These are the things I want to take with me that I know that I do well.
Yeah.
And here's some things I don't want to do. They're draining. I find them exhausting.
Yeah.
If I don't have to, I won't. And so I think it's important to call those things out as you enter into your new role or start to look for new opportunities.
Yeah. And I think there's a way of doing that because, you could argue that, you can't ask for too much in the hiring process.
Sure.
You can. It's how you ask, right? It's like, can you explain to me what a typical day or a week looks like? How much of your time would you spend on this? And then you share. In the past, I have found that I get a lot of energy from these types of activities. So I would really welcome that being a huge part of my role. And so you're positively affirming something into that opportunity, as opposed to if I have to do this, I don't want the job, So like, it's not an entitlement discussion. It's more be aware of the things that you want to double click on and say, I'm really interested in doing more of this stuff in those negotiations and see how they respond.
That's great. And then I think also when you are reflecting on the past, there's a tendency to, if you've been through, like I've been through a layoff, to be driven a little bit by fear, right?
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, I have this point where I've been doing this thing and I know that this thing is not stable, or there's an issue, so I'm going to avoid it, right? And so you drive towards the safer paths. But the safer path may not always be the right path.
There is also
and so there's an
safe
opportunity
path
here to think. Yes, exactly. Especially in this day and age, right?
Yeah.
And so it's what's right for you.
Yeah, 100%. There is no safe path. There is just make the best decision you can with the information you have, but don't try and make a safe decision, because I don't think that exists in tech right now. So then I guess the final thing for me is relocation is one of the options on the table. And hi, my name's Lola. I'm a recovering relocation person. It's a lot to do to yourself, to your family. And I think, it's one thing if you have two jobs that just impact you and it doesn't change your lifestyle, but relocation impacts the lifestyle of your entire family. So, what comes with that relocation offer? How has your partner feeling about relocating their lives? What does it mean that they have this hybrid model where you have to go into the office? How is that going to impact childcare, transportation costs, access to help? There is no right answer when it comes to relocation. If I had my time again, I would do it again 1,000,000 times over. Doesn't mean it's easy. It's kind of like having kids. Even when you want them, it's hard, right?
Yes.
And so you have to look at that relocation opportunity and really know that the first year is going to be tough. And you can do it while pregnant and you can do it with a new baby, but don't assume it'll be easy, and like walk into it with kind of like a clear eye. And it probably needs to be something that's much more of like a family discussion. Is this what you want as a family? Not just, is this the right job for you, the individual?
Yeah. I agree. I relocated not when I had a family, just myself. And it was fun, but there was a lot that I didn't think through. And it was an experience, and I could not imagine
always doing
that in the way that I did that. So definitely +1 to all that you said. To add on to that, I would say, as you are thinking about things like relocation, everything is open for discussion when you are thinking about roles. And so really thinking about how to negotiate your benefits is really important.
Yes.
Thinking about your leave, what support system, as you had mentioned earlier, they have for you when you're on leave or you come back from labor, or planning going through your pregnancy, what allowances potentially could be available for you that you may not know about.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that you are getting the most in your offer to support your family in your decision.
Yeah. And if you have two offers, important. Let them know that there are other options on the table for you. Exactly. You're a desirable candidate, and this is it's not a done deal.
You deserve it all. You deserve it all. Don't feel like you have to shy away from asking for something. If you want it, ask for it. Especially as women, I feel like we tend to be more reserved in our asks.
Yes,
a lot of times because we feel like it's too much, or I shouldn't do that. I just say it. Say what you want. The worst a person can say is no.
100%.
And you're fine.
Yeah.
You will survive the no. And you'll know that it's not there, and you can make a decision even based off of that, right? Because one person may say no and the other may say yes. And you say, okay, thank you for both answering. I'm going to go with my yes.
And any environment that becomes toxic because you asked for something.
Yes.
It was toxic to start with, and that's a signal. Right? So asking should never come with retaliation, and therefore you should always feel comfortable. This actually makes me think we should probably do a Patreon episode on how to ask for things. Because I think there is an art, right? There is always a risk that you come across entitled, but I think how to ask for things in such a way that increases your chances of sounding the way you think you sound and potentially getting the thing that you want.
Lola. Have we told people we have a Patreon?
Have we not?
No.
Okay, well, we got to come back to that. Let's summarize. Let us summarize the advice to this writer.
Oh.
I mean, first of all, go get you, girl. Yes, for demonstrating that pregnant women can get job offers while pregnant and have competing offers and be in a position to decide between them. This is an amazing scenario. But also think about it, really think about career pathing, family situation, the options for what do you want after you come back from leave, and negotiate the hell out of all of it to make sure that you pick the job that best supports all of that.
Yeah. And just two things to add on there, which is make sure that when you are looking at the roles, consider whether they're the same or different.
Yeah.
Because that's important. And then I would say really be honest about what you feel you can take on at this time in your life. And understand that you don't have to focus on safe, but right.
Oh, preach. I love that. Not safe, but right.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, maybe we should just end the episode this week with talking about the Patreon then.
Yes, let's do it. A little project.
So we are obviously I think in our first episode, we shared that we started this podcast because we get a lot of inbound and we feel like we do our best to mentor, support, and guide. And so our Patreon is going to be essentially shorts with that specific focus in mind. So video shorts from Mamuna and I with, a typical piece of advice that we might be giving in a mentoring situation or in response to one of the letters. But these shorts will only be available on our Patreon. And so if you want to hear about them, you're going to have to subscribe to our Patreon and support the podcast. And we will be immensely grateful to you for doing both of those things.
Yes, we are grateful for those who are listening now. We encourage you to share with others. We do this because we love the community. We love what we do. We want to make sure that we can spread our voices to as many ear holes as possible.
Yeah.
And the Patreon is just another opportunity to just speak more directly to folks who are interested. So we're excited about this. And we look forward to hearing what you all say.
Our first few, I'm going to give some headlines on topics, how to think about a promotion, putting someone on a PIP, tough scenario, and then what to do when you're on a PIP, performance improvement plan. So those are our first three Patreon shorts. Incredible advice.
What are some ones coming up?
We've also got negotiating your salary. We just decided to do one on how to ask for things in general.
Yeah.
Managing imposter syndrome, how to network in a remote era. So lots and lots and lots of things in there that we will be sharing via Patreon shorts for you. We've made this show for you, and we want to hear your stories. We have our combined 35 years experience in tech. We have an incredible bank of experts to call on. We are your safe space. So send us your tech challenges and we'll help you create some draft decisions through some real talk.
You've been listening to me, Mamuna Oladipo.
And me, Oyelayo-Pearson.
Edited and produced by me, Michael Blissa, with theme music by 031 MASH.
Email us at help@lostintechpodcast.com or DM us at lostintechpod.